What have we found out in the last 12 years of Indonesia's democratic transitions? Well, 5 things at least. One is that we do not have to choose between democracy and development, right? When I was in school in the 70s and 80s, there was this school of thought that you have to choose. You can't have both. You either have a lot of democracy, a lot of freedom, a lot of elections, but no economic growth, right? Or the other way, you can have a lot of economic growth, a lot of development, but you got to suppress freedom. But you know what? Now we are the 3rd largest democracy in the world. We're known as a very strong and stable democracy. No prospect of coup d'etat whatsoever. And at the same time, you know who's the 2nd highest growing economy in Asia now after China? China is 7.5%, right? You know what the second? People say India. No, it's Indonesia. 6.5% we grew. We're now a member of the G20. We have the largest middle class in Southeast Asia. We are a $1 trillion economy. I've never thought I would live to live in a nation of $1 trillion economy. But our politics, our democracy shot up, and our economic growth also shot up. It's a proof that we can have both, and you don't need to choose between democracy and development. And this is something very important for our spring countries to take notice of. Secondly, we found out that democracy, Islam, and modernity go hand in hand. In our first elections, all the Islamic parties together, right, dozens of them, can't get more than 15%. And the subsequent elections, we've had 3 free and fair elections. All of them together cannot get more than 15%. And they're all sobered up. They all said, look, the best way for us to function in this new democratic setup is by expanding our constituency and telling everybody that we don't want an Islamic state and that we want freedom of religion, religion tolerance in Indonesia, and so on and so on. So in fact, the Islamic parties became the most ardent supporter of our democracy. Right? This is something that I would never have thought, or that I did not expect, but it's one of the most pleasant surprises was that the Islamic parties today in Indonesia became the strongest supporter of democracy because they were suppressed before, and under the new democratic system, they can all come out. And not only that, they have learned that to get votes, they have to be pro-democracy and abandon their objective of trying to create an Islamic state. And not only that, we are very comfortable with modernity. So democracy, Islam, and modernity came hand in hand in Indonesia. Third was democracy actually led to stronger national unity in Indonesia. We were scared, as I told you, to believe that, look, once you have democracy, Indonesia, because all these ethnic groups would crumble. Separatism would rise and so on and so on. Indonesia would break apart into many pieces. And yes, Timor-Leste separated from Indonesia in the year 2000. It was not a nice process, and we regret there was some violence there. But after Timor-Leste separated, Indonesia became stronger, more united. So we said, okay, now we have democratized, should we decentralize? There were a lot of debates about this. But in the end, we said, let's do it. Let's give all the states, the provinces, their own say in managing their own affairs. By the end of 2009, before anyone realized it, every single leader in Indonesia, from the top to the bottom, had been directly elected by the people in this new decentralized format. And the next thing that we achieved democracy without the middle class. We proved the theory is wrong. People were saying, you can't have democracy because you don't have middle class. A lot of people are still poor. Well, you know what? Yes, there are still many mired in poverty in Indonesia, but that did not stop us from pursuing our democratic development. In fact, the poor were the most enthusiastic in promoting democracy. They realized that in a democracy, their biggest asset is their vote. And and it worked. In Indonesia, one of the things that we beat the United States on is, in the last 3 elections, in every 5 years, turnout was over 90% in free, fair elections. We did not ask them to vote. It's not compulsory voting, right? But they all came voluntarily. And that's because they really believe democracy is good for them, especially the poor. Actually, one more thing I forget. Democracy and human rights. right? We had a debate in 9/11, after 9/11. Should Indonesia's democracy lessen our efforts to protect human rights after 9/11? Because we too had terrorist attacks in Indonesia and radical extremist groups. And there was a school of thought that said, look, if you want to get after these groups, you gotta strain on this freedom stuff, on the press freedom and so on. And, we thought hard about this, and then we came to the conclusion, no, we cannot let our democratic development be at the expense of human rights. So these are some of the lessons that we've found out in the last 12 years of Indonesia's democratic development. Now we reach that very rare state of politics where our democracy and stability are connected.